I used to lie to myself a lot, especially when it came to women. I would tell myself that I was some great boyfriend or a real catch, and that all the women who had hurt me in the past, it was always their fault. And this was really true for a woman that I had dated for about 2 years, and I blamed her for the relationship ending, and I really saw her as kind of the villain in the story. And it was only until one of the first times I took psychedelic mushrooms, aka magic mushrooms, where I realized that this wasn't true and the veil started to drop. And I remember sitting on my friend's couch, and all of a sudden it started to kick in, and soon enough the thoughts around my past relationships and what had been going on with women started to surface. And every time I started to have a feeling of frustration towards the other person, like, hey, they weren't really considerate of me, I would be fed with an example of like, well, you did this to them, was that really fair? And after a back and forth battle with my own thoughts, I eventually came to the realization that I was an asshole in these relationships. And as excruciating as that was, that started me on a path of being much more honest with myself and making actual changes in my life. Now, I'm not somebody who's gonna go and say, like, go take psychedelic drugs because they make you smarter or enlightened. I don't think that's necessarily the case. What I think they do is help you drop your ego and stop being self-protective so you can take a real objective look at who you are. But you don't have to take psychedelics to make massive positive changes in your dating life. You just have to be willing to challenge your own bullshit. Let me explain. A lot of guys will come to me and talk about a situation with a woman where it just didn't move forward. Maybe they were talking to her and they didn't ask for a number, or they were on a date and just didn't go for a kiss. And in those moments, they'll tell me many reasons why that thing didn't happen, and they'll often believe it themselves. So they'll say stuff like, I don't know if I was that interested, there wasn't a good opportunity, and I don't think she'd want to in that moment. Any good scientist will take a hypothesis and try to challenge it and test it to validate whether it's true or not. And you need to do the same in those moments in your dating life where things didn't move forward for one reason or another. Let's go back to the examples from earlier, and we'll start with, I wasn't that interested anyway. A lot of men will say this when they didn't go for a number or maybe invite a woman back to their place on a date. So I'd ask myself, well, if she said, I'm really loving this conversation and I'd love to talk to you again, would I have said no? Or if she was on the date and she said, I'm really having a lot of fun and I still have time to kill, do you want to come back for a little? Would I have rebuffed her? And what happens if you can't confidently say that you'd turn down her phone number or turn down her invitation to go back, then you know you're not being fully truthful. Let's use the example of guys saying there wasn't a good moment. And they'll often say this when they see a woman that they'd want to introduce themselves to, whether that's at a bar or a party or an event, but they just didn't go and do it. I would ask myself, how long do I think it would really take to just say hello? Or did I think about approaching her for more than 10 seconds while looking in her direction? And even something like, did I see other people or friends come up and talk to her? Again, those answers will provide clarity on whether you're seeing things honestly or you're just protecting your ego. And finally, let's use the example of, she wouldn't want that in this moment. And guys will often say this when they didn't flirt or go for a kiss on a date. So once again, I would ask myself, has she explicitly told me that she doesn't want me to make a move? Can I read her mind? Do I have psychic powers? Is she showing up to an online date to make friends or to meet a potential romantic partner? If this is a second or third date, do I think this woman has kissed another man in her life in that same time frame? Starting to challenge yourself with these types of questions is so incredibly important to you growing. Because if you think something is true, then that becomes your reality. You're going to act accordingly and prove yourself right. And this is where guys create self-fulfilling prophecies in dating. They don't go for a kiss, and then the woman doesn't feel a spark or feel like there was that much chemistry. She doesn't feel excited to pursue a romantic connection, and you validate in your head, good thing I didn't go for a kiss, she wasn't interested. And that's only true because you made it true. Once you accept this, you can start to be more honest with yourself. You replace your BS with real reasons like, I'm just nervous about making a move. I'm afraid of humiliating myself. I'm worried about being rejected. I'm scared I'm gonna lose my chance with her. All those are hard to admit, but this is the only path that moves you forward. Many people avoid these truths because they feel terrible accepting their weaknesses. But the people who continue to lie to themselves are the ones who stay being weak. If you keep lying to yourself, you'll avoid some short-term pain, but you'll be trading it for long-term misery because you'll never grow or build the skills to attract the women that you want. The first step to making a change is accepting that something needs changing. And if you want to be more aware of the lies that might be holding back your dating life, check out my video here on the 9 excuses guys use to avoid meeting women.